All right, so let's just jump right into it. Creator. One of the more anticipated movies on my end. Certainly after that first trailer dropped, I hadn't heard anything about it prior. Didn't even know John David Washington was in a Gareth Edwards directed science fiction film. So that trailer dropped, and the movie very quickly rose to the top of my most anticipated movies list. We'll start with Tyler. I believe he's the most recent on us that saw it. Tyler, give us your thoughts on The Creator.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on The Creator. So overall, just like a really cool movie that I liked. I didn't love. I felt like I came away from it thinking it could have been a lot better if they would have just done a couple things a little differently. But I will say that Gareth Edwards, like he is the truth. He has got the juice. Obviously, I'm a huge Rogue One advocate, and I believe so he's also done Godzilla and some other smaller films.
2011 low budget sci-fi. Was it like Monster or
Monsters? Yep, Monsters.
Okay.
But Rogue One's the only other one I've seen of his, and I obviously love that. And I think he is a great director. I think the technical production of this movie was brilliant. The cinematography, the production design, set designs, costume designs, just the world that they built was so cool and interesting. And everything visually and audibly about this movie, because Hans Zimmer's score was incredible and the sound design was great. So everything from a technical aspect was one of my favorite movies I've seen in theaters in a while, especially considering the sub $100 million budget. Just incredible. They were able to achieve all that. I will say the world felt unique at first, and I had a hard time articulating this in my Letterboxd review, but just didn't feel like lived in. Like I couldn't really buy into the world being like a thing that's been happening in society for a long enough time. Like it just something about it just didn't feel like they were able to build it enough for me to feel like this is like a proper world that's an actual thing happening in society. I thought and I know we're going to talk about it like at some point in this review, but I thought the casting department was a little bit of a miss here. I'm not a big John David Washington guy. I really just don't like him as an actor, especially like in a lead role. But I also think Allison Janney, who I think is a great actress, don't think she really had any business being in the role she was in. I really didn't really like her as like the general commander. I just couldn't buy into it at all. So I just thought the casting department missed a bit. And then like I feel like the first third of the movie built up this really interesting AI, artificial intelligence world. A lot of sociopolitical themes you could probably read into as well. But by the time the movie ended, I did like it from like an entertainment perspective. Like I enjoyed the ending, but I just kind of was like, it just felt like kind of familiar, honestly, when it ended. Like, I feel like this, and a lot of sentiments similar on Twitter. People are like, the Creator is going to be like the favorite sci-fi movie ever. People like haven't seen Blade Runner and like other like actual like sci-fi proper films. Cause I can see why people would love this, but it feels, I don't know. It just felt familiar. It just didn't feel like it was enough to stand out as a unique movie for me. But Hans Zimmer, I thought was awesome because we mentioned it when this was released that Hans Zimmer was going to be the score. Kind of just like quietly happened to be like Hans Zimmer's score, but I thought it was quite good, especially towards the end when everything got super intense. But yeah, I'll leave it there. I give it a 6 out of 10. Definitely the middle. Also, just last thing is like the middle, like 45 minutes. I got quite bored during, to be honest. I was just like, this is kind of dragging out a bit, but I thought the final third was great. Oh, final thing, the little girl who plays Alfie, incredible. I thought she crushed it. Yeah. She was so good.
She was 7 years old when they filmed.
She was unironically like, and this isn't even saying like to slight Allison Janney or John David Washington. I'm just saying purely like she was the best performance in the movie, and I think it was like not even close. Like I thought she was so good. But yeah, 6 out of 10. Liked it. Wouldn't say I felt disappointed because I'm never a big sci-fi guy, so I wasn't as hyped for this as you two were. But yeah, I had a good time with it.
Seth, the first of us to see it.
Yeah, so I was really excited for this originally, just because new IP, sci-fi. I don't know. I'll start with the negatives because I do have a bit more positive to say. I think the way this is really let down by its script, in my opinion. Like I know we've all mentioned this, even George. Obviously, George liked it more than us, but George's take I actually quite liked. Your review is a little bit different in terms of what you appreciate about it, but I don't think it does anything new. The visuals are so good, and it really is an unquestionable like triumph in the industry. Especially like 80 million budget, we never see that anymore. But I don't think I can overstate how damaging the script was at times for me, in that it just doesn't do anything. Nothing's explored when it was tried to. I think a lot of stuff was attempted about, when we, as mentioned earlier, when he was doing the Q&A after the screening, he actually mentioned one of the inspirations being Ex Machina, Alex Garland's, in terms of, what it means to be human, AI versus humanity. And whereas it was so well explored in a film like Ex Machina, nothing was said in this that hadn't been said before. And I do think it's quite hard with the AI thing because it's been used a lot. But like Tyler said, it felt too familiar. It felt dull. I was quite bored during the kind of. There was a point where I was like dozing off a bit for like 2 seconds during the middle because I was like, what's happening? I also just didn't love the cast, to be honest. I'm pretty similar with Tyler in the same vein that I just don't think the cast. Not that they're not good actors, because I like pretty much all of them individually. I just think they were all miscast, maybe apart from the little girl who was fucking 7 years old, which is crazy. But I do think at the same time there were some sequences in this, especially during the end, during the start, that really managed to immerse me. I think it said in my review into Gareth Edwards' futuristic vision, which I think he's so good at as a science fiction director, and I think he shows a lot of promise. This is coming from someone who I haven't seen Rogue One. I haven't seen which Godzilla film did he do? Like 2014, 2015?
Yeah.
But okay. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen Rogue One. I haven't seen Monsters. But judging from this, I think he's a very strong director. It's funny as well because when I left the screening, everyone around me was saying this is so much like Rogue One in a way that its direction is remarkable, but its script is the way that it lets it down and kind of drags it down slightly. But there were some sequences which literally blew my head off. And I think for an 80 million budget, it's so good. And also, final thing I say, the emotional beats never hit for me. I found it to be kind of emotionally devoid. I didn't really feel anything in the ending. But on contrary to Tyler, actually, I did actually quite like the world. And I did feel like the world was lived in. I feel like it was an organic process that had been accumulating over time. We kind of felt that. But yeah, I give it a 3 out of 5. I was quite disappointed. Not that it was bad, just because I was kind of really excited for this when I first saw the trailers. I just think it was very much beautifully directed, but really, really hindered by its lackluster script. So yeah, 3 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I said in my TikTok review, I completely understand the criticisms and why everyone kind of leans more towards that 3 out of 5 or 3.5 out of 5 score. I completely agree. I don't think this movie does anything to progress that AI versus human narrative, and it certainly doesn't do anything to move the science fiction genre forward, maybe in the way that some of us had hoped, especially after that trailer. I gave it a 4 out of 5, which I guess if you compare that to my expectations, maybe that's a bit of a letdown, but I still had such a blast with this movie. This is just one of the... I just love just being immersed in a new environment, and I think that's one thing this movie does just
an original
ridiculously well. It just felt so brand new. And Tyler, I understand what you're saying, where the world itself didn't necessarily feel lived in. I don't know how to elaborate that, but I understand what you're saying. It didn't feel like they developed the world as well as they could have. But I think Gareth Edwards, just like Neil Blomkamp, and I'm going to plug those Neil Blomkamp short films that I've been watching lately. They both
the comparison is drawn quite a lot between the two.
Because they both just have this very unique eye for science fiction / I guess pre-apocalyptic worlds. They feel dirty, they feel raw. They really elevate or at least for me, they really elevated my experience with this movie because the world itself they took so much care of it, which I really, really enjoyed. And seeing it on the big screen, I was just enthralled. I was sitting in row C, staring up at the AMC Lincoln Square IMAX screen, and I was just this looks sick. I was this is just fantastic. But from a writing perspective, like I said, I absolutely understand the criticisms. I don't think our characters were necessarily developed well enough. This movie tried to give us moments of heart, moments of impactful emotion that I think were well written, but I don't think they had the impact that they should have because the movie didn't build up these characters and these relationships as well as I had hoped for. But other than that, I obviously I've been beating to death the idea of this new created cinematic universe in my head. Just movies that are just very conceptually bold. They're beautiful to look at. There's clearly a lot of meticulous care that goes into this world, but they're all held back by a fairly lackluster and unoriginal script. I mentioned Pacific Rim is in that cinematic universe, Tron Legacy, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Oblivion. For me, I like that. I really enjoy that. Obviously, I talk about Pacific Rim quite often as being one of my favorites ever. I fucking love that movie. So I guess it really depends on how you come into this movie and what you get out of it and how you walk out of it. So I kind of got not what I expected. Obviously, I was fully prepared to just spam 5 stars on Letterboxd after watching this movie. But for what it was, I had a really good time, flaws and all. I could definitely see myself revisiting this one as like a, late night edible watch or something. It's a 4 out of 5 for me. It does sit inside my top 10, surprisingly, because like I've mentioned on the pod before, a big way I rate movies is, can I see myself rewatching them? So like, yeah, maybe Creed 3 and Barbie are objectively better films. I'm probably going to pick The Creator to watch over both of those 10 out of 10 times. So yeah, for me, it's a 4 out of 5. Had a really good time with it. Definitely on the lackluster side in terms of character development, progression of science fiction genres, the AI versus human narrative. But I had a great time with it. I really did. Like you guys said, some of the visuals were just fucking awe-inspiring. Some of the sound designs on the bombs, like the quiet shots, and then the bomb blew up, and then like you get the feel of like that backfire. It felt cool. It looked cool. Tyler, believe it or not, I know you were praising Hans Zimmer. That was like the first thing I said walking out of the theater. Like, that was a little lackluster for my boy.
Underwhelming. That's the first thing I said.
But not that it was bad by any means.
We expect.
Yeah,
so
it's not like as memorable as like his Dune score.
I said
like,
the same thing.
This felt like he was like, this was literally like a side project for him. Gareth Edwards approached him, and Hans Zimmer's like, "Yeah, I got 2 hours on a Saturday. Let me do this for you real quick."
Well, what's funny about Hans Zimmer's score is that what I should have mentioned is when I was watching, I forgot he did the score until like 45 minutes left, and I was like, "Oh shit, he did the score!" And I was like, "I don't remember hearing any score." I was like, I thought Hans Zimmer was doing this, but then like the final climax, I thought the score was really good.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
The final climax.
So to be fair, I really liked in the climax, and I thought retroactively, I was like, the score is probably great the rest of the movie too, but I vividly remember sitting in my seat and I had like an epiphany light bulb moment, like 45 minutes left. I was like, isn't Hans Zimmer doing this score? I'm like, and then I was like listening, and 10 minutes went by. I'm like, there's just no score right now. I'm like, where's the score? And then like the big climactic ending happens. I was like, okay, this is like the Hans Zimmer. That
that was
not iconic for sure. I will never listen to any of these songs and be like, The Creator. Like,
that's the thing. Like, I want to. Like, I'm whenever this score drops on Spotify, I'm listening to it through immediately. Like, I want to see what he did, because at times I felt like maybe he was a little underutilized, or maybe that was like Gareth Edwards' intention, where he wanted to suck all the sound out of it so that he can like make sure that like the audience members are focused on what they're watching as opposed to what they're listening to. But yeah, that was like the biggest thing walking out of the theater. I was like, not the most memorable Hans Zimmer score. During the credits at the end of the movie, Hans Zimmer's name came on the screen, and this guy behind me goes, "Oh my God, Hans Zimmer did the score?" And I was like, fuck off, dude. Show some goddamn respect. I also I wanted to bring up Owen's tweet yesterday where he compared, what was the ship called? The Nimbus? I know
what you mean.
The big ship. The big bomb.
The ship has the big fucking things.
Yeah, that
Nimbus.
one.
Nimbus.
I have no idea. Something with an N. But he basically said it's like a... I could easily just pull up his tweet, but I'm not going to. But he said it's like a more like intimidating Death Star.
I disagree.
I disagree with that, but I like where he's getting at, because like that machine was such a big part of this like story, obviously. And if they made it like look goofy or like just perform goofy actions, I don't think it would have like hit. But like the scenes where it's like flying over a landscape and it's like scanning, and then people are like ducking away and crying, like Gareth Edwards did such a good job at like making it like really feel like this is the end of the world with this machine. Like if you get scanned, you're fucked.
I feel like a much better comparison is War of the Worlds. That's the vibe I got from it. Like scanning, because like you know that those were just tripods going around just zapping people. That's the vibe I got every time. I was like going around scanning. I was like, this is Spielberg's War of the World. I know it's a remake, but I've only seen Spielberg's. But the fun so John David Washington, like, and I don't have the vitriol for him like Mark Ruffalo, I guess. So I'm not going to go too heavy into him, but I don't think he's great at like carrying a movie for me personally, and he kind of has to for a lot of this, especially in the middle of this movie. It's really you're just sitting with him as he's trying to make this trek to he's really struggling between kind of what's right and wrong here. He's trying to do what he thinks is right. I don't think he's that strong as like a lead star. And then George, you brought up my tweet and said Tenet and Black Klansman, which I agree with you. I think he works in Tenet because he's not asked to carry the movie. He's more a vessel. He's literally like named the protagonist. He doesn't even get a name. So he's just meant to be a body that's carrying out the story. And I think he does good in that. Like same with Robert Pattinson. I love Robert Pattinson. Wouldn't say Tenet's the greatest acting performance he's ever done purely because he wasn't really asked to. That wasn't really the intent of the movie, was to let the stars shine as much as they did. I thought both of them did really good in it. Black Klansman as well. I think it's just a really great like ensemble cast. I didn't really feel like anyone was like carrying that movie or had like when the movie came out, he's the main cast member. But I feel like when you watch that movie, you don't think like there's like a John David Washington movie. I feel like it's kind of like Adam Driver, John David Washington,
That's
Jesse
fair.
Plemons.
No, I get what
whereas
you're
like
saying.
Amsterdam, I think when he has to be more of a star, I just thought he was so bad.
No, I get what you're saying, especially with like Tenet and Black Klansman. Like he's never like maybe like even in like Malcolm and Marie, like he's not the sole lead of these movies. Like
he was better in this than he was in Amsterdam. I'll say that much.
I mean, yeah obviously, bro.
He was that.
But like Tenet, like he obviously had Robert Pattinson there to work off of. Black Klansman, you know, Adam Driver was like the shining light of that movie. So like I get what you're saying, where he can't carry a movie, but I still feel like saying that is such a knock because I do think he's a good actor. And I think the creator, I enjoyed his performance. I didn't see like there was no part of his performance, his line delivery or anything he was doing or saying where I was like, ooh, this was miscast. Like I enjoyed him as a casting here. He felt very, beaten down in this movie by like his past, his character's past. Obviously, I'm not talking about him now. I'm talking about his character. And I think he did such a good job at like showing that he's the best at what he does, but he also just lost his wife. So he doesn't want to be a part of this world anymore. So he puts on like that quiet, depressed demeanor really well. And then when he was recruited by, what was that woman's name that you just said? The one that you said,
Allison Janney.
Yeah, when he was recruited by her character, then he like flipped it to like this really badass guy, like no nonsense. So I think he's a great actor. I think he did a good job in this role. I get what you're saying. You know, he hasn't been given I think the creator is a proper opportunity to attempt to carry a film, but I'll also say because the script holds it back, maybe it wasn't the best opportunity to try and prove that he can carry a film. But I still think he's a very, I'm not going to say accomplished actor, but he's a very capable actor.
And that's fair. That's fair. But do you guys agree with me though that I didn't really like Allison Janney cast in this movie, even though I do like her.
I didn't like any. So her Ralph Ineson, who was like a general or something, the one with the really
he was not good.
He was like the
right hand man, right? Like the main guy.
Yeah. I think he's such a great actor. Like he's really good in The Witch, in The Green Knight. I think his voice is so distinct. I think he really worked. I think he was so horribly miscast in this, and I think the same for her as well. Like I think they're really good actors. Like everyone in this was a good actor, but I just think some of the casting choices were really wrong in my eyes.
Went really for. And I don't know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, for God, what's her fucking name? Allison what?
Allison Janney?
Jenny.
Allison Janney. I feel like they tried to go for a very Sigourney Weaver in Avatar type role there.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's fine.
But you know what they pulled off though to me? Wreck-It Ralph in the game, Jane Lynch, where she's like, "Come on, maggots, we gotta defeat it." That's exactly what I was saying the whole time. I was like, yeah, and I think you're exactly right. They were going for like a more Sigourney Weaver badass, and what they ended up getting.
It just didn't. Yeah, it came off very.
I
corny.
never believed her to be like a general who rose the ranks of military command as some like harsh, like hardcore military mastermind.
We'll go on to this, Tyler, but it's funny you say that because obviously we'll go on to this again. But you know, the Saw X ending, that's the vibes I had from that in terms of the main woman in that. Obviously, we won't go into it, but that's the vibes I had.
We'll get to that in Sonics because I actually don't really know exactly what you're talking about. But last thing I want to touch on about John David Washington, because I'm lower on him than George, but I won't say he's like a bad actor. But I thought the girl was so good, and the final scenes of this movie like require such emotional connection between the two that it was giving me flashbacks.
Don't say that was a bad scene.
No, I didn't think he was great. And
Okay.
It reminded me of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You know, like the little girl actor like sees Leonardo DiCaprio and she's like, "You are so unprofessional. You suck." Like I pictured like that little girl as like the Alfie who's like acting her heart out, and then like she's like, "You're giving me nothing. Like I'm acting at a 10 out of 10. Like you got to be matching my level." Because I don't know. I thought the scene was good for like entertainment value, but that's what I mean when I say it just felt so familiar, because I feel like the ending was just very much like, it's like it's very typical ending.
There's one thing that I think would have made this movie like significantly more impactful, and it would have just hit emotionally way more. So for the first like half, and now this is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you haven't seen it, I guess just skip ahead like 5 minutes. It's not that big of a spoiler. But it could be, depending on how you look at it. But we find out that his deceased wife, or not deceased wife, is Nirmata. I thought it was the kid the entire time. I thought that's where they were going. Like
I think that was the point, though, isn't it?
Yeah, like from the first time she puts her hands together and she turns off all the electricity, I'm like, oh, like she's God. Like that's who he is trying to look for, but he doesn't know that she's right there. So I think that would have been significantly more emotional, especially down the line, finding out that the kid is essentially a copy of his actual kid that he was supposed to have with his wife. But yeah, I was like the entire time, I'm like, this kid is God. Like that's God right there. I'm staring at God, and it's really cool. And then they like pulled this curveball, and I feel like they How I Met Your Mothered us in a way where like the mother is just like in a coma. like we're spending this whole movie trying to find her, and it's going to be like this really cool embrace when they find each other. Just like How I Met Your Mother. We spend 9 seasons like, oh, who's the mother? And then
have you spoiled the whole show for me?
Have you
That's
not?
Crazy.
I don't care. Whatever. That's on you. That show's been out for 20 years.
I've seen like 3 episodes of it, man.
You would hate it.
I like Friends.
Yeah, fair.
The kid also just like reminded me a lot of like 11 from Stranger Things, like very similar vibes. Can kind of control stuff with their mind, not quite at the full level of their powers yet. Also, one thing I just want to mention is I've seen people review this movie saying it felt weirdly pro AI, which when you read the movie at surface level, definitely agree. Like basically the movie's kind of
for sure
sticking up for AI. So like for watching the movie and absorbing it without thinking deeper, very pro AI, which is like kind of weird. I can get why people get that rubbed the wrong way, but I'm like, for me, it's like pretty clearly like supposed to be symbolic, and you read more into it. It's not AI like itself. Is, you know, what people have read into it saying it's like a 9/11 type movie, kind of like similar to The Happening, where it's, you know, basically, and they kind of mentioned it early on, which I thought was like where it was really in your face. There's like a socio-political message when they said, when like the news station at the very beginning was like, oh, we're not against the people of New Asia, we're just against like the AI there. So it's kind of like saying like, oh, like, you know, America goes into like Iran and Iraq and just like ruins entire countries. It was like, oh, we're not against the Iran people and Iraq people, we're just against the people that did the bad stuff. And I felt like that was the very big parallel for me. That was interesting, just kind of like more about war in general. And I don't think it's necessarily trying to say that AI is a great thing that we need to stick up for. Very interesting time for the movie to come out though, with like AI taking over stuff, with, you know, obviously the writer's strike that was very heavily involved with AI.
Yeah. And then one other thing, this is a story I think would have benefited without a time jump personally. And I don't know how you guys feel about this. Like I would have loved to see like the immediate aftermath. Like the movie opens and you see this in the trailer as well. And it's like 10 years ago today, the artificial intelligence, you know, that we made to protect us detonated a nuclear warhead in Los Angeles. I would have loved to see the immediate impact of that in like the AI versus human race, you know, the cleanup of Los Angeles, I guess, like because John David Washington's character mentioned that he lost his entire family in that explosion. So I would have loved to see like his immediate reaction, the world's immediate reaction to like AI taking over, I guess. I feel like a 10-year time jump here just kind of removes you a little bit from like the gravity of the situation, because like 10 years is a long time. That's like a how have you not fixed this shit by now kind of long time.
I think that's kind of what they're going for, isn't it? Like it's the norm in society, and that's kind of the way that they're headed in terms of it was the norm, and you're kind of adapting to that. I know what you mean, though. I think it would have been fun to see the initial impact and everyone kind of freaking out.
And again, I'm like going right back to like Neil Blomkamp and District 9. Like that's like an immediate thing. Like aliens come in, blah blah blah. You're kind of seeing it like firsthand on how people are reacting to that shit.
Have you seen District 9, Tyler?
Yeah, long time ago though. Like that was I think when I worked at a movie theater, and I saw it like in theaters when it came out. So
movie.
Long time ago. But yeah, like I think George, what you mentioned is kind of probably what the missing key is for me, where I said like it didn't feel lived in. I think that a little more of that before the time jump might have been what I was kind of looking for to really solidify
just like
this world
something, because like obviously he built a beautiful world. This movie's awesome to look at. There's no denying that.
Just even the opening like reaction to it. That sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's like it doesn't feel. It feels very built. It doesn't feel natural, I guess, is what we're trying to say. But we could wrap up our creator review there. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Currently, I believe, sitting at my number 9 spot of the 10, actually. I think I have May December slightly above it. I have to check my rankings. I already forgot. Seth and Tyler, both at a 3 out of 5.